The Supreme Court ruling 2 weeks ago on free speech, I think, was an important victory in this whole battle, where we had the web designer who didn't want to do gay wedding websites. She would do services for gay people, but just not the wedding websites. And the Supreme Court held her free speech rights and her right not to be compelled into speech she doesn't support outweigh the laws that are supposedly about, equality for various groups. They were basically saying you cannot force somebody to support a cause like gay marriage if their legitimately held belief doesn't allow that. If they don't want to support it, you can't make them say that they support it. You can't make them design websites supporting it and so on. I really think it's got a direct parallel in the work that you're doing. I mean, how many cases have you seen where kids are forced in the classroom to participate in these racialized discussions that they don't want to participate in? And if they try to sit back and just keep their heads down and stay out of it, the teacher says, you must speak up. We need to hear from you. And what she means is we need to hear you affirm our messaging about the differences in races and how one is oppressed and one's the oppressor and so on.
Yeah, and this is really the key to understanding how all of these things work. I think a lot of people the past few years have looked around and said, what happened? How did all of our institutions suddenly become gripped by this ideology and really deranged away from their original mission to provide education, to provide essential services, to provide a product for sale in the marketplace, and then toward the total kind of ideological conditioning of society according to these basic tenets, whether it's a race theory, gender theory, et cetera. And you have to understand that this is part of a long, decades-long process where the left came up with a strategy, as I explain in the book, in the early 1970s to go on a long march through the institutions and then take their ideology anti-democratically in an extra-parliamentary manner and force it on people through HR programs, through K through 12 curricula, through university faculty hiring, and et cetera, because they know that when voters are asked, do you believe in the principles of CRT, DEI, trans ideology, they wholeheartedly and in a strong majority reject them. So what they've done is they've hijacked all of the transmission belts within the systems of power, within the institutions, where they can force it on you, because they know that their ideology can never win consent of the public, the consent of the governed. So what they've done is a very sneaky, very subversive, and really, frankly, very anti-democratic method for forcing you to repeat the words, for forcing you to use the pronouns, for forcing your kids to line up according to their racial privilege. And so the fight against this from conservatives, the left says conservatives are anti-democratic, they're fascists, they're authoritarians. The opposite is true. We need to revitalize the democratic structures, to restrain our institutions, our public institutions, in the best interest of the citizens themselves, consonant with the values of the people who pay for these institutions, who are the fundamental stakeholders in these institutions. And so the solution to this anti-democratic measure is not to try to fight them on their own terms, but actually to go over their heads and to say, we need to restore democratic governance of our institutions. And if the ideology is opposed by 70 or 80% of the people, it shouldn't be in the K through 12 classroom. That's not how public institutions work. That's not how our republic works.
So how do we do that? And I know you were the one who convinced Donald Trump to write an executive order getting rid of CRT in our federal agencies, which of course then Biden changed. But you've been working with Ron DeSantis in Florida to try to de-wokeify Florida and its institutions. That's been very successful. But how do we do that? Because I think of things like the teachers union and I feel overwhelmed. They've completely captured the Democrat Party. They do whatever the teachers union wants. And what they both want is to indoctrinate our children in both of the lanes that you just referred to.
Yeah, well, there's actually really good news. And the final chapter, the conclusion of my book, talks about how conservatives can combat America's cultural revolution with their own counter-revolution. And it requires some big thinking. It requires big confidence and courage. And it requires moving pieces of legislation through state legislatures and hopefully one day, if power shifts, through the Congress and to the president's desk for signature. But in Florida, for example, we've been making tremendous progress that can serve as a prototype or a model for other states. Legislators banned critical race theory in K through 12. Legislators banned gender surgeries for minors and banned gender ideology in the K through 12 school system. Legislators recently banned the DEI system, have reformed faculty hiring in public universities. The governor appointed me to actually be part of this new board majority to take over one of Florida's public universities, transform it into an institute of classical liberal education. And then finally, and I think really in some ways most importantly, legislators have instituted a universal school choice program so that any family in the state of Florida that is anxious or nervous or in opposition to what's being taught in the public school system can take those taxpayer dollars and take them to any institution of their choice. Private school, religious school, homeschool,
yes, school choice is, yes. We know
anywhere
this is
that they want to go.
But can I ask you, because some of those things have been struck down by the courts, Chris. Some of those things have been struck down by the courts. And the problem is, and I'm all for eliminating these agendas from public and private schools for that matter. But you got to do it within the bounds of the law, because we can't have an authoritarian government on the right that tries to tell everybody what they can and cannot say any more than we want it on the left telling us what we can and cannot say. So, I mean, predicted...
there's some nuance there, though. So, I mean, look.
Well, but speak to the legal losses. Speak to the legal losses, because I understand what you're pushing and I like it, but you're losing in the courts.
Setback. There's been really no losing in courts. There's one specific aspect of one of the bills where the district courts have ruled against the state of Florida. But I think I'm confident, and I talk with the legal team, that will prevail. But that's very specific.
There's been multiple losses, and I'm on your side, okay? I like the agenda, but I want this to come forward in a way that can be sustained legally. The Stop Woke Act was ruled against, and that was upheld, I believe, by the 11th Circuit, the preliminary injunction against the act. So was the act banning the medicalization of, for minors in schools, or for minors in the medical community. There's been a multiple sort of attack by Ron DeSantis, which I like, but it's losing in the courts.
For sure. But you have what I think is going to be a minor setback applied to a very specific part of the Stop Woke Act, specifically in higher education. That's where the case is probably weakest for the state of Florida. But the attorneys feel confident that they can win it on appeal. They'll eventually prevail. And I think that it's important to make this distinction. In K through 12, public school teachers are agents of the government. They have compulsory power over kids. And as you know, from the Supreme Court precedent on Ceballos versus Garcetti, their speech is not protected by the First Amendment when they're in the classroom. So we have an absolute authority as citizens to say to public school teachers with compulsory power over our kids, you can't promote this, you can't promote that, you have to promote this, you have to promote that. We set the curriculum, we set the standards, and we set reasonable restrictions.
Do you see those dark spots in the mirror? You want help making them go away? Introducing the Dark Spot Corrector from Genucel, right in time for summer. The Dark Spot Corrector, with not one but 3 cutting-edge ingredients, goes to work fast to target sunspots, dark spots, liver spots, even old discoloration, both on your face and your hands. You can now enjoy your summer sun, beach, and barbecues without those spots with Genucel. And thanks to Genucel, you will see results, or you will see your money come back to you, no questions asked. So go to Genucel.com right now. Get your dark spot corrector with the new Genucel most popular package, now featuring summer essentials like the best-selling Ultra Retinol Moisturizer that has a powerful retinol alternative for safe use in the summer sun. Visit Genucel.com/MK60 for these amazing summer essentials and save over 70% off Genucel's most popular package. Free shipping, free returns, and excellent luxury skincare, all at 70% off. Genucel.com/MK60, GENUCEL.com/MK60. All orders include a mystery gift while supplies last. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.